I had never seen the office so quiet. Maybe it only felt that way because of the weight I had been carrying for weeks, work pressure, relationship stress, and the constant feeling that no one really noticed how tired I was anymore. My partner barely looked up from their phone when I left for work that morning. We barely spoke during breakfast, and even when we did, everything sounded forced, like two people performing a conversation instead of having one. I tried to ignore it, telling myself it was just a phase, but deep down, the distance was starting to scare me. By afternoon, I could barely keep my eyes open. My team had been pushing toward a deadline, and the back-to-back meetings left me drained. I stayed late to finish the last report, telling myself it would only take 15 minutes, but the numbers on the screen blurred, and my head felt heavy. I didn't realize when my fingers slipped from the keyboard. I leaned back in the lounge chair, just for a second, I thought, just to rest my eyes. But exhaustion doesn't ask for permission. I must have fallen asleep instantly. I didn't hear footsteps. I didn't hear the door open. The world simply faded into silence until the faint sound of someone adjusting the chair beside me tugged me awake. For a moment, I didn't move. My eyes were still closed, and I felt something warm draped over my shoulders, a blanket. It startled me, because I knew I hadn't brought one. When I slowly opened my eyes, the room was dim. And sitting quietly on the other chair was my coworker, Aras. His posture was relaxed but alert, as if he were making sure I didn't fall or strain my neck. He wasn't looking at me, just scrolling something on his phone, giving me space even though I didn't ask for it. For a second, I froze, unsure what to say. All I remembered was being exhausted, and now suddenly he was there beside me. A strange mix of gratitude and discomfort settled in my chest. "You're awake," he said softly, noticing movement from the corner of his eye. I sat up straighter. "How long was I asleep?" "Maybe an hour," he replied. "You looked really tired. I didn't want to leave you alone." There was nothing inappropriate about his tone. No teasing. No smile that suggested anything more. Just concern, genuine and gentle. And maybe that's what made it hit harder. When was the last time anyone had looked at me with that kind of care? I tried to stand, but the blanket slipped. He caught it before it fell and folded it neatly. "You should go home. You've done enough today." His voice was calming, a contrast to the chaos I'd been living in for weeks. "Thanks," I murmured, not really knowing how to accept kindness anymore. It had been missing from my life for so long that I didn't know where to place it. As I gathered my things, I noticed the small remnants of his evening, a half-finished coffee, a notebook, a jacket over the chair. Had he been working late too? Or had he stayed because of me? Before I could ask, the lounge door opened, and two coworkers walked in. Their eyes widened almost instantly, first at me, then at Aras, then at the blanket. A smirk appeared on one of their faces, and I felt heat rise to my cheeks. "Late night, one of them teased under their breath. I opened my mouth to explain, but they walked past us, whispering to each other. My stomach tightened. It was nothing, absolutely nothing. Yet the way they looked at us twisted it into something else. Aras noticed my discomfort. "Ignore them," he said quietly. "People like them create stories because they don't have their own. But rumors travel faster than truth, and I could already feel the narrative forming around us. The coworker who stayed with me while I slept. The blanket, the quiet room, the timing, the expressions, all of it created a picture that wasn't real." I stepped out into the hallway, still adjusting to the bright lights. My phone buzzed, my partner asking when I'd be home. A normal question on the surface, but even that felt heavy. I wanted to go home, but I didn't want to face the cold silence waiting for me there. Aras walked out behind me. "Hey," he called gently. "Don't worry about what they think. You were just tired, that's all." His reassurance warmed me more than the blanket had. I nodded, unsure how to respond without revealing how fragile I felt. "Thank you, really." He smiled, not flirtatious, not suggestive, just understanding. "Get some rest. You look like you need it." As I walked toward the elevator, I felt something strange, guilt, relief, confusion, and something I didn't want to name. Nothing had happened. Absolutely nothing. Yet the moment felt heavier than it should have been. And when the elevator doors closed, I caught a final glimpse of Aras standing there, hands in his pockets, watching to make sure I left safely. A small kindness. A dangerous kindness. One that would soon grow into a storm I wasn't prepared for. The next morning, the office felt different, not because anything had changed, but because everyone else seemed to believe something had. Whispers died down when I walked past. A few coworkers exchanged knowing smiles. One even gave me a wink as if I had been part of some secret adventure. I hated how quickly a harmless moment had turned into gossip. When I reached my desk, Aras was already there, typing quietly. He looked up when he sensed me approach. "Hey," he said, voice calm, steady. "Rough morning." I sank into my chair. "They're already talking," he sighed. "I figured. You don't have to explain anything to anyone." But it wasn't their opinions that worried me most, it was my partner's. Last night, I hadn't mentioned the nap at work. I didn't lie, I just didn't know how to explain it without inviting misunderstanding. Our relationship was already brittle, and even a small crack could shatter it. Still, the silence I had carried home wasn't much better. My partner had sensed something off, but they didn't ask. They just handed me a cold dinner plate and told me they'd already eaten. We barely spoke before falling asleep on opposite sides of the bed. By noon, the weight of everything was pressing against my ribs. During lunch break, I stepped into the quiet staircase, hoping for a moment alone. A few seconds later, the door creaked open, and Aras walked in. "You okay?" he asked. "I'm fine," I replied, though my voice said otherwise. He didn't push. Instead, he sat 2 steps above me, leaving space but offering presence. "You don't deserve to feel cornered. They're just bored." I looked at him, wanting to believe that was all. But the problem wasn't what people were saying, it was how easily their looks made me doubt myself. Why was I so affected? Why did I care that someone saw us together? Why did it matter so much that he had stayed beside me that night? I didn't have answers. That afternoon, as we worked together on the project deadline, I noticed something I hadn't before: how patiently he explained things, how he never raised his voice, how he always sensed when I was overwhelmed. If I grew quiet, he stepped back. If I struggled, he stepped in. His presence felt stabilizing in a way I hadn't experienced at home for a long time. At one point, he leaned slightly toward my desk. "You look tense," he said softly. "It's just everything," I admitted. "You don't have to carry all of it alone." His words lingered in my chest long after he walked away. Later in the day, my partner texted. "Heard something about you at work today. Call me." My stomach twisted. Someone had said something. Or maybe they had seen a post, overheard a call, anything was possible. I hesitated before dialing. "What's going on?" my partner asked, their tone sharp, suspicious. "Nothing happened," I said immediately. "Then why are people saying you were sleeping with someone at work?" I closed my eyes, feeling frustration burn behind them. I fell asleep. That's all. And Aras stayed to make sure I was okay. A long pause followed. "Cold, heavy, loaded. So he stayed with you while you slept?" "Yes, but, and you didn't tell me." Their voice broke slightly, not with anger, but with hurt. I didn't know what to say. The more I tried to explain, the more defensive I sounded. My partner's silence grew until they finally ended the call with a distant, "We'll talk later." When I lowered my phone, Aras appeared beside my table. "Everything okay?" I didn't want to drag him into my personal chaos, but the exhaustion must have shown in my eyes. My partner heard something. Understanding flickered across his face. "I'm sorry. I didn't want to cause any trouble." "You didn't," I assured him. "It's just complicated. Most important things are." He hesitated. "If you ever need someone to listen, I'm here. Not because of rumors, because I care." The way he said it, quiet, honest, without expectation, sent a dull ache through my chest. It had been a long time since someone had cared without turning it into a demand. That evening, he approached my desk again. "Coffee?" he asked. "Just a break from all this noise." I shouldn't have gone. I knew that, but the thought of sitting alone with my spiraling thoughts scared me more. So I nodded. We walked to the cafe across the street. The air between us felt warm, not romantic, just safe. He listened as I talked, really listened, not the way my partner did when distracted or impatient. He understood my silence too, filling the spaces with calm reassurance instead of judgment. At one point, he said quietly, "I don't want to be another problem in your life. If I'm making things harder, you can tell me." "You're not," I said before thinking. And I meant it. Maybe that was the real problem. When we walked back to the office, the sun had begun to set, casting long shadows across the floor. I realized then how much time had passed, how natural it had felt, how dangerous it was becoming without either of us admitting it. Nothing had happened, nothing inappropriate, nothing crossed, but something inside me had shifted. And I wasn't sure if I was ready to face what that meant. The walk home that night felt heavier than usual. Every streetlight seemed to spotlight the guilt threading through my thoughts. I kept replaying the conversation with my partner, the disappointment in their voice, the unanswered questions they didn't have the strength to ask. By the time I reached my apartment, the weight of everything pressed so deeply into me that even turning the key felt exhausting. Inside, the silence was suffocating. My partner sat on the sofa, arms folded, eyes fixed on me with a mixture of hurt and guarded expectation. I knew we couldn't avoid the conversation any longer. "Did you really think I wouldn't hear about it?" they asked quietly, not raising their voice but somehow making the room feel smaller. "I didn't hide anything," I said. "I was exhausted. I fell asleep. That's the truth." "And he stayed with you." Their fingers tightened around themselves. "Why would he do that? And why didn't you tell me?" The truth lodged in my throat. I hadn't told them because the moment had felt too complicated, too vulnerable. And maybe, deep down, I had known telling them would open a wound neither of us wanted to admit existed. "He was just being kind," I said. "Nothing happened." My partner let out a brittle laugh. "That's the part one don't understand. Why is he the one showing kindness? Why isn't it me?" The question struck harder than any accusation. I opened my mouth to answer but realized I didn't know how. When had we stopped caring for each other? When had silence become safer than honesty? We argued, not loudly, but painfully. Words overlapped, emotions collided, old resentments resurfaced. They accused me of changing, of drifting away. I accused them of not noticing me anymore, not asking how I was, not seeing my exhaustion. By the end, there were no winners, only two tired people staring at everything they had avoided for too long. I stepped outside to breathe. The cold air slapped against my cheeks, grounding me. I walked without direction until I reached the corner of our building, and there, as if drawn by some strange timing, Aras was standing by the parking area, leaning against his motorcycle with a worried expression. "You left in a hurry earlier," he said. "I wasn't sure if you were okay." Part of me wanted to turn around and walk away. Another part felt an overwhelming relief to see someone who didn't look at me with disappointment. "It's not okay," I admitted, voice cracking. "Everything feels wrong." He straightened. "Did the talk with your partner go badly?" I nodded, unable to trust my voice. He didn't try to hug me or touch me, he simply stood close enough to make me feel less alone. "You're hurting," he murmured. "And I hate seeing that." The honesty in his tone broke something in me. I didn't cry, but I felt tears burning behind my eyes. I tried to hide my face, but he noticed. "Hey, it's all right," he said softly. "You don't have to hold everything in. I don't want to drag you into this," I told him, wiping my cheek quickly. "You're not dragging me," he replied. "I'm here because I want to be. Not to complicate your life. Just to be someone you can talk to." It should have comforted me. It did, and that scared me more than anything. We talked for a long time, not about the rumors, not about the blanket, not about what people thought. Instead, we talked about life, burnout, disappointment, the fear of becoming a stranger in your own relationship. He listened without judgment, without trying to fix me, without telling me what I should feel. At one point, he admitted something unexpected. "I care about you," he said quietly. "More than I probably should. And I've tried to ignore it because I know you're with someone. But seeing you pretend you're fine, it hurts." My breath caught. Those words, gentle, hesitant, landed with a force I wasn't prepared for. "Why would you tell me that?" I asked, not accusing, just confused. "Because I couldn't keep pretending today," he said. "But I'm not asking for anything. I don't want to be the reason your life falls apart." His sincerity softened the air between us. The moment felt fragile, suspended, dangerous, not because of anything physical, but because of everything emotional. I stepped back, needing distance to think. "I don't know what I feel," I admitted. "You don't need to," he replied. "Not now. Not for me." The kindness again, the same kindness that had started everything, wrapped around the moment like a quiet storm cloud. When someone walked past us and glanced suspiciously, I realized how it must have looked. the two of us talking outside in the dark, my face still showing traces of emotion, his expression full of concern. Rumors would grow again. I knew it, and yet, I didn't step away. Not immediately. Not this time. Something inside me had shifted, and I couldn't deny it anymore. The question now wasn't what others would think. It was whether I was ready to face the truth forming quietly inside me. The next morning arrived with a strange stillness, as if the world knew something inside me had shifted even if I wasn't ready to admit it. I woke early, long before my alarm, and stared at the ceiling while fragments of last night replayed in my mind, the argument with my partner, the raw honesty in Ari's voice, the way he looked at me like he saw every part of my exhaustion without turning it into a flaw. I didn't know what today would bring, but I knew something had to change. Pretending wasn't working anymore. Silence wasn't saving anything. And the longer I let everything stay blurred, the more unfair it became to everyone, including myself. At work, the atmosphere was different. The whispers were still there, but they didn't carry the same sting. Maybe I had grown numb, or maybe the weight of my real problems had overshadowed the noise. Aris greeted me with a quiet nod, keeping his distance, respecting the storm he knew I was still walking through. We worked without speaking for most of the morning. But every now and then, I caught him glancing my way, checking if I was okay. Not interfering, just acknowledging my presence. It was strange how a simple look could feel like understanding. By lunch, I knew I couldn't avoid the conversation waiting for me at home. I messaged my partner, asking if we could talk in the evening. The reply came quickly, yes. We need to. The heaviness returned, but this time it wasn't fear, it was resolve. When the workday ended, Aris approached me cautiously. You're leaving early. Yeah, I said, tightening my grip on my bag. I need to talk to them. He nodded slowly. Good. You deserve clarity. Both of you do. There was a moment, brief, gentle, where our eyes met, and in that silence, I understood something clearly for the first time. Whatever existed between us, whatever pull or comfort or connection had grown, it needed space to breathe honestly. And it couldn't grow in the shadow of an unresolved relationship. He seemed to understand the same thing. Take your time, he said softly. I'm here, just as a friend. Nothing more, not right now. His restraint, his patience, it made everything more difficult and somehow easier at the same time. When I reached home, my partner was waiting at the dining table. No anger this time, just tired eyes, the same kind I saw in the mirror every morning. We can't keep living like this, they said quietly. No, I agreed, we can't. We talked, really talked, for the first time in months. Not about Aris, not about rumors, not about the blanket. But about us, about all the ways we drifted apart without noticing. About how we had both stopped trying, both stopped listening, both started filling emotional gaps with silence instead of effort. They admitted they felt replaced before they ever saw evidence. I admitted I felt unseen long before anyone else stepped into the picture. We apologized, not for specific mistakes, but for the years of small neglects that had brought us here. And then, in a moment that felt both painful and strangely peaceful, we agreed to take a break. Not as punishment, not as rejection, but as an acknowledgement that sometimes love weakens quietly, long before either person says a word. When I left the apartment to get some air, the world outside felt different. Lighter, sharper, uncertain, but honest. For the first time in a long time, there was no pretending. No performing, just reality. A few days passed before I saw Aris again. He approached me cautiously, searching my face for signs of how things had gone. So, he asked, voice low. We're taking a break, I said. He exhaled, sadness, relief, guilt, all mixed together. I'm sorry you're hurting. It's okay, I said. It was overdue, not because of you, because of us. He nodded. I never wanted to come between you two. You didn't, I replied softly. What came between us happened long before you stayed with me that night. Silence settled between us, not awkward, not tense, but fragile. I don't expect anything from you, he said finally. Not now, maybe not ever. I just need you to know, I care. And whether we stay coworkers, or friends, or something more someday, I'll respect whatever you choose. His words didn't rush me. They didn't bind me. They simply offered a door, one I didn't have to walk through yet, but one I could acknowledge without fear. For the first time, I allowed myself to breathe deeply. I don't know what I want yet, I admitted. I need time to understand myself first. That's exactly what you should do, he said with a small smile. And I'll be here, not waiting, just here. In that moment, something settled inside me. Not certainty, not a decision, just calm. Maybe someday I would explore what existed between us. Maybe someday I wouldn't. But for now, healing was enough. Honesty was enough. Freedom was enough. As I walked away from him, the sun dipping low behind the buildings, I realized the real story hadn't been about infidelity at all. It had been about two tired hearts learning the cost of silence, and one unexpected kindness that revealed the truth neither of us wanted to face. Sometimes the most dangerous moments aren't the ones where something happens. They're the ones where something almost does. And sometimes, that almost is what finally leads you back to yourself.